Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Time Out with Derek and Joe. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to our podcast. We are here with a special guest today, Phil Angle, good friend of mine from DeSales University, has come on to join us to talk some baseball. Welcome, Phil. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks, Joe. Honored to be the first guest. Really excited to talk some baseball.
Now, Phil, I will ask, why do you enjoy baseball? And why is it one of your favorite sports to talk about? Any particular reason?
Definitely it's the stats. The stats part of it is always drawn to me. And then I just like the unpredictableness of it. You never know what's going to happen each night. That's kind of the big draw for me. And then just as though I've gotten older, I've just kind of enjoyed the game more. So that's, yeah.
Good to hear. Well, we're excited to have you on here. Now, Joe, we got a good show, more baseball, but we're getting into crunch time here, Joe.
Phil, thanks again for joining us, and definitely really happy to have you on here. And we'll tell the listeners we're going to have them on a couple more times, definitely a couple more times, if not more. But yeah, we're going to do the recap of the interesting wild card series is there's more than, I think there's 8, if I'm not mistaken, 8 games. Mm-hmm. We're doing that, and then we're going to go on and talk about the preview of the divisional round, which will be starting up on Monday afternoon. So let's talk baseball, guys.
So as Joe said, we're going to start here with recapping the AL wildcard series. Now, I do want to say apologies with our last video. We had some technical difficulties, so the NL side got cut off, but I didn't do so well anyway. I think Joe got them all right with his picks, but we apologize for the technical difficulties. Thank you for sticking with us here. So the first spot was, of course, the Tampa Bay Rays facing off against the number 8 seed Toronto Blue Jays, and that game finished in 2 games. Now, as we said last week, this is different from normal years. This is only a best of 3 series. So Tampa Bay won the first game 3-1, and then the second game 8-2. Both games played in Tampa Bay. Now, Joe, to me, it seemed like Blake Snell and Tyler Glasnow were who really stood out with 17 strikeouts in 11 innings, and it was really their pitching that stood out above maybe what the Blue Jays threw out there.
Yeah, Blake Snell is absolutely their number one. I guess Glasnow would be like 1B. I don't even know if you give him a 2. But the one thing that, and again, their pitching is gonna, if they're gonna win, and we'll talk about it later. If the Rays are gonna win, they're gonna lean on their pitching. Their hitting is pretty good. And the one thing I did take a notice was that Manny Margot, 2 for 3 of the runs scored in the game. He had a pretty good day in a 3-1 win, like you said. I'm impressed with the Rays, and I'm not giving away any spoilers for later. But here in the timeout show, I want to say that the Rays will be a very hard opponent for the team they'll be playing.
Phil?
Yeah, I think Tampa definitely showed why they're the team to beat in the AL. Buffalo, I'm gonna call them the Buff Jays because they're playing in Buffalo, but they got there. They got the 8th seed. This just isn't their year yet. I think they're still a couple years early. They tried to trade for some pitching. I think Buffalo. I think Montoya kind of stuck with his pitching plan a little too. He stuck to it too much to a T. Had pulling Shoemaker in the first game right after 3 innings. He was cruising, and they pulled him, and it kind of backfired right away when Robbie Ray gave up the run, and that kind of sealed the game in game 1. But yeah, I think Tampa is going to be really tough for my team, the Yankees, in round 2, especially if they're going to continue to pitch like this.
Yeah, and I thought about the Toronto Blue Jays with all the deals that they made. You mentioned all the pitching they brought in. and all those deals seem to not quite push them. They have a lot of youth, which they have to look forward to with Biggio and everyone, and Guerrero and all those pieces. But it wasn't their time yet. Tampa Bay is very crafty in getting their runs. So as long as they can eke out a couple runs a game, they will be tough to knock out, as Joe said.
So our second matchup was the New York Yankees actually being somewhat of an underdog here, taking on the home Cleveland Indians. The Indians hosted the Yankees, and game one score was 12-1 New York. They really got the bats going, and we'll talk about one of the players I thought had a great game. And then game two, they actually won 10-9 in what I thought would be a Cleveland win. And what do you say? I mean, the Yankees are as good as anybody in the American League. We know that. But Derek, do you think the lineup is going to be able to hit the Rays pitching, as we said? How do you feel about it?
And I think Phil may have some stats about how the Yankees did with them during the year. But I would be interested to know how many of those were with a full healthy lineup. Probably none. So I think the hitting, if they're healthy, you said the runs that they scored, and that's against maybe one of the best pitching staffs in baseball in Shane Bieber and Carlos Carrasco. They didn't even get to Plesac, who's a good pitcher in himself. But now I did mention, I don't want to throw myself a bone here, but I did mention I thought Cole would win game one. Granted, I did not think Bieber would get blown up the way he did, giving up 7 runs. I know A-Rod, Alex Rodriguez, the commentator, mentioned how they were jumping on a lot of first pitch fastballs. And hey, smart, because you don't want to get to that junk, the PlayStation curveball that they were talking about. And
what about
Cole?
You said, Derek, you made a really good point about the fastball. A-Rod said that. Look at the two big guys, Urshela and Torres. Big home runs.
Yeah.
And one was a grand slam by Gio Urshela. So I just want to throw that in there, that the Yankees, they brought the bats. If they do it again, what a series we're going to see come Monday night.
Yeah, I mean, I was just gonna say, coming in that, as a Yankee fan, coming in that series, I was real worried. Shane Bieber, he's going to be probably the unanimous AL Cy Young. I mean, he should.
Absolutely.
First pitcher to win the Triple Crown since Johan Santana in about 15, 16 years. So, I mean, going into that, I think Bieber, Carrasco, I think was going to be real tough, especially how the Yankees finished the season. They were 2-6 down the stretch. They didn't look like themselves. But I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but the Yankees are close to unbeaten when like a full healthy lineup and they hit at least 1 home run. So if they're going to keep hitting like that, I mean, it's going to be some bad blood in the ALDS with the Rays. That's a budding rivalry there. But if the Yankees are healthy, if Judge and Stanton can stay on the field, if Urshela and Torres can continue to hit like that, I mean, they're as deep 1 through 9 in the lineup as anyone. I would put them up against, I think the Braves maybe have the best lineup 1 through 9 in the league. Don't want to forget the Dodgers too, but I think a fully healthy Yankee lineup, like it was,
it's scary.
A fully healthy lineup, 1 through 9, as it was in the wild card series, I think is going to be really tough to beat. Even given the arms the Rays have. So kind of
and we'll give a little credit to the Indians. I mean, they came back, and that second game was back and forth.
Yeah,
that
was
a couple rain delays. Yeah. Now I do. Now Phil and I play fantasy baseball together, and we were talking about Brad Hand earlier in the year and how eventually he was going to blow up. Well, he didn't all year until the most important time, and that was tough. They didn't quite pull it out, but it should be interesting to see where the Phillies. Yankees, where the
Thanks,
Yankees go
dude.
from here.
I will say I think Shane Bieber picked the perfect time for his first blow up of the year. You know, Cy Young votes are already accounted for, so he can't lose
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think, and I think, yeah, they were spitting on that. You know, they were spitting on that curveball. You know, that curveball is so filthy all year for Bieber, and then they just jumped on it right away. So
Mm-hmm.
I see my Yanks
Great
move
approach.
on game. So.
Yeah, great approach.
All right, so we'll move on to the third AL series. You know, everyone's favorite team, the Houston Astros, moved on, taking care of business in Minnesota, winning two games to none, winning the first game 4-1, and then clinching it 3-1 in game two. I think Houston had gotten their swagger back a little bit, seeing some of the comments after that series. You know, Carlos Correa had a message to the haters and whatnot, but so they're moving on. I think Dusty Baker had a really well managed series. You know, using Greinke and Valdez, that combo in game one, and then the bullpen was just as strong in game two. You know, the Bomba squad really for Minnesota didn't really show up. Limited to 2 runs the whole series, but you know, 2 runs is still better than some teams did. So, I'll just get into some specifics. You know, in game one, I think the series really turned in game one, especially in the top of the ninth. It's 1-1, ground ball to Jorge Polanco. He boots the throw, and that leads to 3 unearned runs. Who knows how that series turns? And then, you know, Minnesota really couldn't recover the next day. So, Michael Brantley, Kyle stood out for Houston's offense. And I mentioned, you know, the bullpen for Houston really struggled all year, and it didn't this series. You know, I think having Framber Valdez have 5 scoreless innings, and then Christian Javier coming back with 3, I think, hitless innings in game 2. I mean, that's hard to beat, even with Minnesota's vaunted lineup. You know, I think some people thought this was Minnesota's year. I think some people on this podcast picked them to win the World Series. You know, I won't say who, but some people thought that. Yeah, but I think, you know, Houston showed that they're gonna stick around for a little bit. So,
Yeah.
think of Eric, what'd you guys think of that series?
Yeah, of course, being a Mariners fan, I don't like seeing Houston win, but they had Greinke in a bad spot. They had him throwing a lot of pitches early, and I thought they were going to run him out fast and get to the bullpen that at that point we didn't think was going to be very good. But he came back. He threw his 4 innings, and then, as Phil said, Valdez came in and threw 5 shutout innings. My guy to look for was Nelson Cruz, and I feel like Nelson Cruz got knocked in like their only runs in the series, basically.
And
and we'll see if they bring him back again. I don't know if his contract runs through next year.
He's a free agent, I believe. So
okay, yeah. So we'll see if they bring him back. It wouldn't being in the middle of the lineup. Now last week, Joe and I did talk as if Josh Donaldson was going to play, and he did not play in that series. And I think he was sorely missed because there was really no one in the middle of that lineup who, besides Cruz, who knocked in any runs. And I will say in the second game, I noticed, I believe it was 1-1 at the time, and Rosario was thrown out of the game for arguing strikes or something like that. And I noticed that seemed to be a turning point, because in the top of the 7th there we had a couple home runs, and then it went off the rails a little bit. And we both did pick Minnesota, so I didn't pick him for the World Series. That wasn't me. But
I don't know who that was.
It was, but hey, they have a good pitching staff. Maeda, Barrios, they both pitched pretty well. They just unfortunately couldn't put up the runs, huh, Joe?
Yeah, and I think Phil made another good point. I think you look at Michael Brantley, he was 2 for 5 with 2 RBIs. That 1 RBI was a very clutch hit. And Michael Brantley was just a free agent, 2 years ago, and everybody was like, oh, he's going to get paid money, but what's he going to do? He's really hitting well, and he's helping the Astros. remember this name too, Kyle Tucker had 2 hits in the second game. He's a really good young player and somebody to watch out for in the organization. So, yeah, Houston, listen, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do going forward.
So our next series here was the 2-7 matchup between the Oakland Athletics and the Chicago White Sox. Very good series. The only one in the AL that actually went 3 games. There were only 2 series that actually went 3 games. Now the Oakland A's lost the first game. The White Sox took it 4-1, and then Oakland came back behind a strong. Now, I'm sure we'll get into it, but Lucas Giolito really pitched well in game 1. And then Chris Bassett pitched very well in game 2 for Oakland. And they pulled it out 5-3. And then more hitting, but a lot of bullpen in game 3s for both teams. But Oakland pulled it out 6-4. I would say my turning point was the bullpen for Oakland. Almost 15 innings they threw in between the 3 games, 17 strikeouts, and Liam Hendricks, Phil, was he was one who really stood out in the coming out of the bullpen, who pitched both the second and the third games.
Yeah, it was. I mean, we talked fantasy a little earlier. Liam Hendricks kind of was the ace of our staff. Closer, and he really showed up in this series. He had, he threw almost 50 pitches, 49, I believe, in game 2. Got, he wasn't able to finish that game, but Diekman kind of bailed him out, and then just to throw him right back, Melvin throwing him right back into the fire to close it out in game 3 was real huge. That, and it's not just him. That whole bullpen for Oakland's a real strength team. They can. They can roll it out no matter if it's Diekman, Sorio, Giovanni, just to name a few guys, they can beat you in a number of different ways, so. Yeah,
we mentioned last week how Diekman didn't even give up a run until a week or 2 ago. So it's a real, and he ended up, I believe, closing out game 2 ultimately, right? Because a couple or a run or 2 did come across for Hendricks after pitching 2 innings. But Joe, what were your thoughts on the series?
Well, I know you guys, and listen, Oakland's really good, but I was really impressed with the White Sox. I think that series could have it would have been interesting to see go 5, to tell you the truth, but I was impressed with Tim Anderson. He's a really good young shortstop, and he had a good series, I thought, but let's definitely focus on the A's. And, they have these pitchers, like Luzardo looked really good, the lefty, right? And me and Phil talked the other day a little bit about that Frankie Montes, who looks to be pretty formidable for the A's going forward here. It's Houston, Oakland, right? That's what we got coming up, and I think that's going to be a good series. I'll tell you a player to watch out for, and I kept seeing him and not produce. And if he doesn't produce come this divisional series, they're not going to win, and that's Matt Olson, the first baseman, the big lefty. He's got to produce. And I kept score for all 3 games, and all I kept doing was putting strikeouts or flyouts. Like, I don't know.
Matt Olson hits a home run or strikes out. That's
right?
Sure.
Like Matt Stairs. Like,
he's one of the true outcome guys. Walk, strikeout, or home run. That's it.
Mark Canha and guys like La Stella and these good players, they need their middle of the order to step up, and Olsen, I just figure he's going to be a key to that.
Yeah, I mean, just going off of that, I thought, coming in that series, I thought the White Sox were going to do it just because I wasn't liking what I was seeing out of Houston, not Houston, Oakland's offense. They were really just, not really lively. Really early in the year, they were just like, you were excited to watch some Oakland games, and then down the stretch, you just were kind of boring. So, and I think a lot of that had to do with the loss of Matt Chapman. And, they didn't really miss a beat in this series without him. So, I'm kind of glad. Even though I picked Chicago, I'm pretty glad to see Oakland move on because, I think they got the tools to make a run. So.
Well, we're off to the NL. That wraps up the AL. We're going to go off to the NL, and listen, we're gonna start with the best team, arguably in baseball, besides the Rays, is the Los Angeles Dodgers, and they did what they said they were gonna do. They were gonna take care of business, and they won. They took the series 2-0 over the Milwaukee Brewers, and the game one was 4-2 LA, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But Walker Buehler had a pretty good game. I think he struck out maybe 7. Game 2, they won in a shutout 3-0, and they won because their ace of aces, who has kind of gone backwards a little bit, but Clayton Kershaw was wonderful. And the team, talk about weaknesses, Derek. What do you say about this team? They lost like 15 games all year.
Yeah, they're going to be awfully tough to beat, and we'll see. I'm interested to see what all our opinions are facing the Padres here, because I feel like if there's one team in the NL, it may be the Padres to take them down, but it's tough. You mentioned Buehler, he had 8 strikeouts, and Mookie Betts came in. He had 2 doubles in the first game and brought him in to do what they wanted him to do, and that was sit at the top of the lineup, get on base, knock in some runs, and that's what he did. And you mentioned Clayton Kershaw, and I think everyone knows about his struggles in the playoffs normally, and he really just came out there and dominated this, granted, under 500 Brewers team. So we'll see where he lines up against a team like the Padres. I did want to point out in game 2, the Brewers were in very good shape, and I believe it was in the 5th inning that they had a failed turn 2 double play to end the inning, and the Dodgers ended up scoring their 3 runs in the 5th inning, and that was the game. That was it. They scored their 3 runs. They couldn't catch up to them. And we talked about the Brewers before. Unfortunately, Woodruff pitched with Kershaw for a while, but eventually those 3 runs got to him. And I don't know if I liked the Suter start in game 1.
Well, the Corbin Burns injury really hurt them, because if they have Corbin, you throw him in one of the games, and then also, not having that, that rookie phenom Devin Williams coming out of the bullpen really hurt too. He was shoulder injury, so he didn't get to pitch at all. Who knows if those 2 guys in that series, Brewers coming in, they lost and then clinched a spot. So they didn't even earn their spot. They were one of the 2 teams under 500 to make the playoffs. But, and then going off the Dodgers, I can't really expand much. Great pitching, great hitting, great bullpen, even with Kenley kind of teetering on be good or bad. I think they had Brewstar Gratterall ready to take over closing duties if he falters later in the postseason. But I think the Dodgers did just enough as they needed to win just to get by this kind of less than average Brewers club.
So many young arms for LA. Dustin May, Gonsolin, both those guys up for Rookie of the Year. And then just the usual suspects, a Max Muncy. But I am kind of sick of the Dodgers. I'm not going to lie. Like, I want to see somebody else in the National League in the World Series. It could happen, yes. It could be in my predictions. But no, the bottom line is, and by the way, I messed up. I want to correct myself. 13 strikeouts for Clayton Kershaw in the second game. I just want to correct myself.
If Kershaw's going to pitch like that, I think the Dodgers are going to be they're going to be they're an even tougher team. If you get Kershaw right in the playoffs, they're going to they're going to be a real unbeatable. So.
NL is going to be fun. I think American League's going to be real good, but the NL could be really, really, really fun. Great matchups all around the board, I feel like. So, well, what's next there, guys?
All right, we'll move down the bracket. San Diego against St. Louis. And the Padres win their first playoff series since 1998, coming back, losing the first game and then winning the next 2 to move on. Coming in that series, I was really, really scared. I love the Padres. they're really fun to watch. Machado's back to form. Tatis is really taking another level. There's a few other guys that are just fun to watch. But coming into that series, I was real worried because, you didn't know how they were going to respond with Clevenger and Lamet, the Nelson Lamet. And he kind of showed right away in that game one. Chris Paddock, he struggled all year. He just, I think his fastball is, I don't know if he's hurt or not, but his fastball is not as good as it was last year. His changeup's okay, but still. And he struggled right off the bats, spotting St. Louis 4 runs. They go on to win game one. But, they really rebounded game two. I think they had 2 separate rallies. Tatis and Will Myers, I think, were the first – I think I saw a stat. They were the first pair of teammates since, like, Gehrig and Ruth to hit 2 home runs in one game, playoff game. So, I mean, having those 2 come up clutch in the game 2 to help them win 11-9. Wainwright was really cruising in that game, and then the Padres just got to him in the 6th. And the game kind of flipped there. They scored, I believe it was 9 of their 11 runs in the final 3 innings. The offense really came alive, and it kind of continued in game 3. I think game 3 was pretty telling on the Padres front because, that bullpen coming in the playoffs really wasn't that good. And then they had to rely on them 3 straight games. I think almost every single bullpen arm in San Diego pitched 3 games in a row. And they were all really good in game 3. 9 pitchers combined for the shutout. And so I think America's really going to be on, San Diego. I think they were going in, and it's glad, it's good to see them move on. Derek, what do you think in this series?
Yeah, and we talked about I mentioned how I was very shocked when they went ahead with Kim, the Cardinals did, to over Wainwright, who has been almost 40 years old, has probably been in how many playoff series, and they went with him in game 2 instead. And Flaherty, who's got the best stuff. He may not have had a best year this year, but I was kind of shocked. And, I mean, Kim pitched well, and as you said, Paddock did not, unfortunately. And they did miss Lamet and Clevenger. We'll see if they're available for the Dodgers. If they're definitely not, then I think we can almost just give it to the Dodgers because it'll be very tough between the bats and the arms there.
Not to interrupt you, but I did hear that they don't think Clevenger will be available, but they're pretty sure Lamet will be. So they get one. I mean, but Clevenger's injury is a little bit too hard to come back from.
Yeah, so, Joe, I mean, they have a lot of talent with San Diego. I mean, I noticed they did throw Davies out there in game 2, and he got knocked out pretty quick, and Strahm came in, the lefty, and Phil kind of mentioned the bullpen, and 9 guys came out there in game 3, 9 guys and 9 shutout innings. Not a lot of teams can do that. And I will throw out Cronenworth's name, who is really, more of a utility guy, and he hit over 600 in this series to go along with those couple guys who had the 5 home runs in game 2.
Yeah.
They're going to be a scary team in the next for the Dodgers, I would think.
Sure, LA's not happy to see him. They're in the division. It's kind of like the next matchup we're going to hear about too. What we could hear about, I should say. But no, I just think that we're all kind of on to this, is that if LA plays their game, I'm not sure anybody can beat them. If they hit as well as they do and they get pitching from Kershaw and Buehler, God forbid one of the rookies, I just don't know if they're going to lose. But San Diego's exciting. They're fun to watch, and it's going to be a really interesting series going to the next one in the Divisional Series.
So the number 3 seed Chicago Cubs then took on the Miami Marlins, who, hey, more power to them. I did not have I gotta say, I didn't have them winning. But Miami won the first game 5-1, and then the second game 2-0, and shut down the Cubs. I will say, Phil, was it more about the lack of Chicago's bats, or was it more about Miami's pitching, do you think?
So, so I was kind of the opposite of you heading into this series. I really thought Miami was going to win. I thought, the Cubs offense has been, to use, lack of a better word, I think it was close to a train wreck all year. They weren't really, they started off real hot and then they kind of were playing a little under 500 ball the rest of the way. And then I think besides the Reds, they came in with maybe the lowest batting average as a team, collectively, maybe 220. And it just showed, I think, Alcantara in game one, Sixto Sanchez in game two. I mean, those two really came through big, especially Sixto making his major postseason debut. The rookie who just debuted, like a month ago.
From a Phillies prospect.
So I thought Miami definitely had the arms to take care of Cubs bats, and that's exactly what we saw. They shut them down for 2 games, and they're moving on.
Joe?
Well, I have to say, in my unbiased opinion, the Miami Marlins had to go through a lot in the season, in the beginning of the season, and then even just to get to how many players they used over the the 2 months of the shortened season. Guys like Garrett Cooper, these young players like Rojas. These guys are playing with like monopoly money, if you will. They're just going out there and playing, and they got veterans in Starling Marte and Corey Dickerson, and they're going to help. Listen, if they beat the Atlanta Braves, now Miami hasn't lost the postseason game ever, so that's really something to hear about. But if they beat that vaunted offense and even those first 2 pitchers and Wright and Anderson, we'll get to it. I had to just say that though. But I feel really bad for Cubs fans right now. Rizzo, Forber, like those guys, like Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, we're talking about a real good core.
It's been a downhill slide with that offense. That offense, ever since they won the World Series 4 or 5 years ago, they just haven't hit in the postseason. So, and this more of the same this week. So,
that's how
do
you lose,
either
right?
of you think that the Cubs break it up with the Baez, Bryant, Rizzo, who have been there, Contreras, who have been there forever? Do they send some of those pieces away?
You can have Chris Bryant. I think he's done. I think.
Yeah, I mean,
not knowing their contract status and whatnot, I think. I think Theo Epstein is really going to have a tough offseason, depending on what to do, because the bullpen kind of was a makeshift thing all year. They definitely got better in September for sure, but in August they were kind of a mess. And it's funny. I think Chicago, really likes that offense, and I think Rizzo. I think they're going to be heroes in that city for a while. But
I agree.
I think Theo Epstein definitely has some answer. Some questions he needs to answer. This
they got to retool. They got to get it. Probably Jason Hayward needs to go. They need to get some, and they need to just bring in some guys. And that's a really good topic for one of our hot stove on the timeout show. We can definitely get into that as the winter comes, because we'll have a lot to talk about when it comes to off-season baseball, if you will. But Derek, do you have anything else on this series, or do you want to end up with the last one?
I was just gonna add on to what I was saying. I think they have way too many people who seem to be past their prime, the Cubs, and including pitching, who they seem to put a lot into. I mean, Kyle Hendricks pitched pretty well this year, but I don't know how much longer you can lean on him and
You Darvish.
John Lester and innings out of Jose Quintana, who
besides you Darvish. I mean you Darvish, who probably will be, he'll get some Cy Young first place votes. He'll probably lose out to Bauer, but besides that, I mean, that starting rotation is definitely. Hendricks was really good this year, but he's still throwing 88, 89. I mean, he's making it work, but see what happens. See what happens next.
Yep.
All right, gentlemen, we have the last series for the wild card series, and I paid close attention to this one, and there it is, as Phil's holding up his Atlanta Braves hat. It is the Atlanta Braves and the Cincinnati Reds. And Atlanta took it 2-0. It didn't really surprise me. Game one surprised me. In a 13-inning battle, 1-0, and Freddie Freeman walks it off. Of course, Freddie Freeman walks it off. Freddie Freeman always does something ridiculously good.
That's my MVP.
There it is. There it is. Probably should be. Game two, the Braves win 5-0. We'll get into the specifics a little bit. Ronald Acuna Jr., an absolute monster, 3 for 5, 1 RBI. Ozuna's been hitting well. He had 2 RBIs in that game. And listen, it's all about pitching in the playoffs. If Fried and Anderson and even Wright, if they pitch well, I don't know. Miami's got to play over their heads. Atlanta, no spoiler, but Atlanta should make this difficult for Miami. Phil, since you're a Braves fan, let me hear it.
All right, so for anyone that doesn't know, I live down in Atlanta, so I've kind of transitioned to my Braves as my second team, and I'm happy to see them advance. They heading into that series, I thought the Reds could have been a sleeper World Series pick. With that pitching, the pitching lined up perfectly. And exactly what happened is what I thought was going to happen. The Reds pitchers, Bauer and Castillo, were going to shut down the vaunted Braves offense, and it did. Except the Braves pitching was, just better. I think it was an MLB record, 22 innings they held the Reds scoreless. I think no other team has had that, went that long without a run in the postseason ever. And, there was question marks coming around into the playoffs with Max Fried, especially Ian Anderson, who's only made about 6 starts. But
It looks ridiculous, though.
They both were phenomenal. And then that Braves bullpen, there's a lot of people like to question if they have enough guys and whatnot, but or if they have the stuff even, because they're not all of them are overpowering throwers. Melanson, the closer, is throwing like low 90s, but they were phenomenal this series, and I think the offense did just enough. It was good to see Ozuna and Duvall really wake up at the end of that game, because I think before those two hit 8th inning home runs, they were, I think, 0 for 15 with 11 strikeouts combined, just the two of them. So if those guys can get cooking, along with Acuna, Freddie Freeman, and Ozzie Albies, even Dansby Swanson, that, like I said, I think they have the best offense of the teams that are left. So
well, I will say this, and Derek, I'll kick it right to you then, but I want to say this, since I am a diehard Phillies fan at heart. This is one of the Braves teams I actually like. I like these guys because they are likable. Albies plays the game hard. Acuna plays hard. They really all play the game the right way. And back in the 90s, I didn't like the Braves. I really did not like the Braves at all. But this team, I can actually say that I don't mind them. But anyway, Derek, what did you think about the series?
Well, I have to go the other way, because I was one who took the Reds to win this series in 3, and boy, did they let me down. I knew, and I think let me go back to my stats from last week. I did mention how their offense is one of the lowest offenses in the league, but come on, not a run in 21 innings, as Phil said. Bring in. Go ahead, Phil.
No, they had their chances too in game 1. They had the base loaded, I think, in 3. I think they left the
13
guys. They left, yeah, exactly. 13 guys left. I think I forget the inning, but Matzik, a guy who historically had the yips. He's coming in and he's wild all over the place. The bases are loaded, and then apparently the Reds dugout was chirping him, and he just wanted to show it to him, and he got out of that inning. But if the Reds score that inning, they get out. The whole series might turn around. But
right,
yeah,
and that's
a lot of
chances.
A lot of chances in that first game, and like I said, 13 men on left on base. They just couldn't. And unfortunately, the guy, if you look way back in our trading deadline show,
oh boy,
we talked about the Reds being a winner because of bringing in an Archie Bradley, to be a potential back end option. He's the one who lost the game for them in game one. Granted, I mean, it wasn't 13th inning, but and then Iglesias, who is just, I think Phil and I both learned you can't bring him in non-safe situations.
It's not going to end well. It's not going to end well, and that's what we saw again. So
I
wonder if that's more of a mental
thing.
thing.
Uniform. We're still Iglesias. I drool at the fact of that.
Yeah, he's definitely a step up from that Phillies bullpen for sure.
Oh, absolutely.
But hey, more power to the Braves. More power to the Braves. I think they'll be tough to stop moving forward.
Well, that wraps up our very, very interesting wild card round series. And Derek, let's tell everybody what's next.
Yeah, so obviously we're moving into the ALDS. I believe this series will be played in San Diego as opposed to being played at the team of the lower seed. These are going to be at other stadiums. So this one's going to be played in San Diego. Obviously, being at Saturday night, they don't really have the pitching matchups lined up yet, but you have to think the Yankees are going to be going again with Cole and Tanaka and perhaps Jay Happ in game 3. Now, this is a best of 5 series, so we're still not at 7. We're still at 5, so you may be able to get away with only 3. Whereas Tampa Bay will probably be throwing out Blake Snell and Tyler Glass now, maybe a Charlie Morton, who has been there with Houston in game 3. Now we won't go too in depth. We kind of talked about both teams. For me, I would say the key is the hitting for the Yankees being healthy, and I do not trust the Tampa Bay Rays hitting. I don't. I mentioned it a few weeks ago that there's really no one in that lineup that you can count on to get you not in my opinion, to get you a game-winning hit or a big hit or anything like that. There's a bunch of good, solid hitters, but when you're going up against Judges and Voits and Giancarlo Stantons and all those guys who every one of them at any time could be hitting bombs out of the stadium, will Glasnow and Snell be able to shut them down? I don't think so, not in my opinion. I have the I do have in 5 games, but I have the Yankees going to the ALCS in 5 games. Phil, as partial Yankee fan, what is your impartial?
So I'll take away the bias for this series. I think I will say off the bat, I think the winner of this series will make it to the World Series. I think that's a pretty safe bet, especially if they're going to both play like they did last week. Fun. This is definitely one of the series to look out for in the ALD, in both of the division series and on either side. These two teams hate each other. They've been going at each other the last couple of years. It started a couple years ago. Kind of continued last year when CC in his final start hit one of the Rays players after they threw it Austin Romine's head. And then it kind of boiled over this year. He had some Rays guys doing it, and then Chapman throwing 1-on-1 over Mike Broussard's head. So these two teams hate each other. Fun fact for the series, I believe they're staying at the same hotel in San Diego. That should be pretty fun. So at least that's what I saw yesterday. I think, this is going to be a really good evenly matched series. I think, Tampa really took it to the Yankees this season. I think they really want to show the Yankees who's the best team in the East. Now, a lot of those games were played when the Yankees were kind of scuffling. They weren't fully healthy, so it's kind of a different tune. And like you said, Derek, I think if Garrett, him and Tanaka, they're both very, very, very good in the playoffs. They kind of, Tanaka kind of got screwed over there with the rain delay, giving up 4 in the first inning, but then he was nails the rest of the way. if those two can get the Yankees off to a good start in the series, you think Hap can kind of be okay. And then in game 4 or 5, we'll see what happens. They could bring back Cole for game 5, but the no off days is a little tricky. And then for the Rays, like you said, the offense isn't good, but they're scrappy. I really like that rookie, Randy Arozarena. He was really good in the against Toronto. And then that pitching, just like what the Yankees had to go through with Cleveland, they're going to have to go through with Tampa. That's 3 starters you really don't want to face. And that bullpen, that bullpen is loaded for Tampa. I think the edge might be there. The Yankees don't have as great a bullpen this year. I think that's kind of the weak spot of the team. But kind of finish it off here before tossing it to Joe. I think, like I said, I think the winner of this will go to the World Series. And I'm not going to turn away my bias too much. I'm still going to take the Yankees, but I think it is going to go 5 games. I think this is going to be probably the most heated. I think our next series, Houston and Oakland, might because those two teams hate each other too. But I think Tampa, and New York will definitely be heated, and I think it's going to go 5, and I think the Yankees are going to come out on top.
All right. Well, both predictions have been pretty interesting and pretty good, and right along the same lines as where I think I'm heading here. Listen, the Rays are good. Their pitching is definitely what anchors their team. I think Derek and Phil hit that right on the nail in the head. I can't say it better than that. I do think, though, the Rays could have some clutch hits with a couple guys in their lineup. But like Derek said, there's nobody that scares you. There's nobody that's you're not going to game plan to stop one guy or 2 guys. So bottom line is Yankees bats stay hot. Yankees win it in 5.
All the way around.
All right. I like the sound of that.
All right. Well, this would be the other division series matchup. And I think Phil made a really good point earlier. The Houston Astros are not very well liked by many people in Major League Baseball, including fans, which won't be very many at the stadium. But they are taking on the upstart Oakland A's. And my thing is, you can't discount Houston's bats. You just can't. Carlos Correa, Michael Brantley, Kyle Tucker, the list goes on. They have bats. Do they have enough behind Greinke? As me and Derek said last week, McCullers is okay. I know Quada, if I'm pronouncing that right, he's okay. Like, there's guys that are okay. But when you're pitching against an Oakland A's team with some pretty decent bats in Marcus Semien, Olsen, Canna, Phil or Derek, somebody take this out of my hands.
So like I said, I think this is gonna be a pretty heated series. Houston. Oakland's coming in thinking Houston stole some division titles from them with all the cheating scandals the past couple of years. So I really think they're gonna be coming out hot. In more than one way. Anger and in their play. I do like Houston's pitching. It's gotten a lot better since McCullers came back. McCullers came back from getting treatment on his neck, and he was like lights out in three starts to end the year. But besides that, they didn't really have to go into that bullpen in game 1. And, in the first series, Dusty kind of strayed away from some guys, opting to go with the piggyback option. You're not going to really be able to do that in a 5-game series. You're going to have to go to, you're going to have Valdez probably start a game or Javier start a game.
Okay.
We'll say Greinke and Urquidy are pretty good, and like Joe, you said, the offense for Houston is really good. But I think I don't know if we're going to do predictions now or not, but I'll give mine. I think I'm just going to say Oakland. I think they're going to just be really prepared to play in this series. They're going to come out well, and I think they're just going to sweep them. I think their offense can do enough. I think their offense can do enough, and I think we saw with the pitching. If Luzardo can get on track, and Bassett was probably one of the better pitchers in the American League in September, and I love that bullpen. So I think I'm gonna take Oakland in 3.
Okay. And Derek, by the way, I will say that I go Astros in 4 with the bats.
By the way,
Derek?
these games are going to be played in LA. So that's not a home game for Oakland, but it's
No.
closer.
Yeah.
They're in California
Man,
still.
everything I wrote down here says Oakland. Eight games that they played. By the way, Oakland won the season series 7-3, and 8 of the games were by 3 runs or less. And ultimately, that is the bullpen. That is because of the bullpen, most likely. Now, and I think it's gonna come down to are the Houston Bats gonna become the Houston Bats of old? We saw a little bit of it in with the Twins, not a ton. You still didn't get a lot of out of Altuve, and um, I agree. Bassett is probably a very strong point for Oakland, but otherwise, with the pitchers, none of them really scare me. You didn't see too much out of Luzardo in the first game against the White Sox, and Fires was kind of in and out, and it was more of a bullpen game. I don't know what Houston has lined up. I'm sure it'll be some form of great game of colors, Urquidy and Valdez and Javier. I don't know. Call me crazy. I think it's just written somewhere that Houston is going to win this series just to prove everything wrong that, they didn't do anything wrong. So I don't want them to win. I really don't. I'm going to be pulling hard for the A's, but I say give me Houston in 5 as well. I don't know. I don't think the bats for the A's will be enough. Joe mentioned Olsen, and he never showed up. If he doesn't show up and Kana doesn't show up, they're not going to be knocking in runs. And I don't want the Astros, but I have the Astros in 5 as well.
I think
I was just gonna say before we move on, or before Joe make a final point on. I will say the one thing I'm definitely looking forward to out of all of these 4 series is Mike Fiers pitching in the series, because he was the whistleblower on Houston, and that's right.
I don't know if Fiers might have faced him in the regular season. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I mean the playoffs are a different animal. It's fun.
Somebody's going down. It's
going to be fun to watch him on the mound with that team. So.
Well, that's a great point. And I just want to throw this out there for all these series. How about the fact they're going to be played in all warm weather places? So, again, some of these places, you know what I mean? Like, even in Atlanta, it's not. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see the weather, how that affects some of these teams.
And then I don't know if we mentioned it at the top, but they're all intra-division rivals, so it's going to be a pretty fun week. So
slugfest, no pun intended.
All right, we'll move on to the NL side. I think this has the makings of a pretty fun series. Dodgers Padres. This will be starting Tuesday night. I'm going to assume it's going to be the late game on Tuesday. There's going to be 4 games on Tuesday. That's our first loaded DS gate day. And this will be played in the bubble in Arlington, Texas, in the Rangers' new stadium. Now, this series, I think, as we mentioned, it really hinges on the health of Clevenger and Lamet. There's some reports out there saying, one might be ready. Maybe not both. I mean, if one comes back, whether it be Clevenger or Lamet, it's a big help, obviously, especially if they can go multiple innings. I think that's really where it hinges. I think in the series, the season series was pretty close between the two teams. I think the Dodgers had a 6-4 record, but all the games were pretty close. I don't think there was really any blowouts, maybe 1 or 2. But I think I've heard some interviews. I heard an interview with Manny Machado not too long ago, and he's like, they've been treated like as little stepbrothers for a long time, and they're ready to prove, to the big brother, the new team in the West. But like I said, I think it's really going to be tough to beat the Dodgers without Clevenger and Lamet. You can't rely on that bullpen like you did. Tingler was awesome managing that bullpen in the first series, but now you add 2 games maybe, and you add it to a team that can actually hit. The Cardinals can't really hit. They kind of did in the first game, but I think that was more on Paddock missing spots. And I mean, you're not going to be able to fall behind against the Dodgers because that bullpen is going to really kind of hammer home the lead. So I think, the Dodgers, especially like I mentioned when we were doing the wild card recap, if Kershaw's going to pitch like that, not to mention all the young pitchers that Joe mentioned. I mean, they have loaded. They're a loaded team, obviously. Having said that, I will say, making my prediction, if Clevenger and Lamet play, I think I like the Padres in here. So my official pick with an asterisk will be Padres in 5. But if both of those guys, kind of taking the soft way out, giving kind of 2 predictions here, but Lamet are out, I think the Dodgers move on. But I will be really pulling for the Padres here. So my official, you put down Padres in 5 for me. Hope, fingers crossed with the injuries though.
You're getting one of them. We're sure of that one of them will pitch.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But we'll see which one
we'll
it is.
see. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Derek?
I think Phil's kind of spot on. It really depends on if Clevenger and Lamet, Dilson Lamet, who are their 1-2 starters, if they pitch. If they don't go, you're down to Davies again and maybe Paddock again, which is not going to be good.
Yeah, you don't want to rely on Paddock. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah, it seems a little mental at this point that he's given up a lot of runs with all the
so good last
talent he has in his arm. Yeah, it's
exactly
pretty crazy.
Talented kid. Yeah.
You have to think the Dodgers are going to go with Buehler and Kershaw. Maybe Kershaw will go 1 if I don't know when that starts, if he'll have enough time off. But you wonder where they go in game 3, maybe Dustin May or Gonsolin that Joe mentioned earlier. I think it'll go 5. If one of the guys pitches, I really hope they both pitch so we can really get some great games. Because I think this would, if those 2 are in, it's going 5. I would think it's going 5 no matter what. But I will say the Dodgers in 5. That's me thinking one of their pitchers will be in there maybe. I don't think the Kershaw is going to be that dominant the way he was against the Brewers. I think we might see old playoff Kershaw in the game with the Padres. We'll see a lot of big right-handers who are hitting well for San Diego in Tatis, Machado, and we mentioned Myers earlier. This is a tough one because injuries always throw a big wrench into things. I will go Dodgers in 5, but I'm with you. Phil. I'm pulling for San Diego, especially because there's a bunch of Mariners on that team now. So I'd love to see them.
Not to mention Austin Adams. Not to mention Austin Adams is back. So
yep,
he picked up the win in game 2.
Austin Nola.
Yep, Austin Nola is getting a lot of game of catchers, so I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see.
All right, guys. I love how you picked I love how both of you picked because I have to come out and say that even if Clevenger pitches or even if Lamet pitches, I still want to take the Dodgers. I just don't know if the LA Dodgers aren't so fired up, aren't so motivated to show that even though they get to these World Series and they can't break through, maybe the shortened season is how to break through. But no, they have so much talent. We know that. I'm going to be quick here because we got one more to go. But I'm going to tell you right now, I think it's the Dodgers in 5. I think San Diego has a heck of a team. I really like them, and I'm probably going to root for them. But too much, just way too many arms. Rotation and bullpen, and I just think the lineup is going to be too much for San Diego to handle. But, man, that lineup for San Diego, there's no break in it, as they said last night in the game. So, Dodgers in 5.
Yeah, well, like you said, I'd be very interested to follow San Diego in the coming years. I think that they could quickly overtake the Dodgers somehow, but I think that'll be a great rivalry in the next few years.
One more starter.
Who takes that division each time. But unfortunately for the Giants and the Rockies and the Diamondbacks, I think they're going to be a little further down the next few years, which brings us to our final NLDS game. As Phil said, every one of these games is a divisional game. All of the central teams have been knocked out, 4 of them in the NL, 3 of them in the AL, which kind of shows where the class of the divisions are, and it's in the East and the West. And here are the 2 East teams that made it in. The number 2 seed, Atlanta Braves, and the number 6 seed, Miami Marlins. Atlanta, you have to figure, throws out Max Fried again in game 1. He pitched amazing. Ian Anderson really stepped up, as Phil mentioned, even after not getting a ton of starts in the regular season. And then I would think Kyle Wright would be the 3rd starter. They don't have any other options.
No, Kyle Wright was going to be the 3rd starter if it went game 3.
Yeah. And Miami, you would have to think, would do the same kind of thing. Alcantara, maybe they'll throw Pablo Lopez, who was another good right-hander for them this year. Sixto Sanchez. Call me a negative Nancy for the Miami Marlins, but I am putting them down again. I'm not picking the Miami Marlins. I'm going Atlanta Braves. I think now, I don't think that the Braves are facing as good of a rotation as they did with Bauer and Castillo, obviously with Bauer being a Cy Young candidate, as Phil mentioned. I think they put up some runs this series, and do the Marlins as well. I think they'll be very close games, but I picked them in a sweep. I picked the Braves in a sweep. I think every game will be very close, but the Braves bullpen is one of the best in baseball, as Phil mentioned, and those arms, I think, are good enough, and the bats are going to put up some runs. And I'm sorry, Marlins fans, if we have any in who watch these, I just really do not believe that they're going to move on. And maybe Phil or Joe, do maybe one of them have the Marlins moving on? Let's go to the Braves fan over there.
Well, I think this is going to be a fun series. I think, the Braves kind of handled the Marlins, especially down the stretch when the games were actually meaningful for the division title. I think the Braves kind of showed the stronger hand there. There was a couple games that weren't even close. There were a couple blowouts, especially that notable 29-9 game. If the Braves offense can continue hitting like that, especially against Miami pitching, they're going to be, I think the Braves might, coming into the playoffs, I didn't think the Braves pitching, they had enough of it, I think the farther along they get, it's going to, if they get to a game 7 in NLCS, it's going to be tough. But I think in a 5-game series, they might be just have enough to get by. Kyle Wright's not the ideal 3rd starter. And if they get to a game 4, it's not going to be Max Fried coming back on short rest. It's going to be probably a bullpen game led by Robbie Erling, Josh Tomlin.
Tommy Malone?
He's hurt, so it's not.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, it's going to be some. But as one of our good friends, Tom Kane, says, the Marlins have nothing to lose here. They're playing with kind of money. They're really coming in hot. They got nothing to lose, and they haven't lost the playoff series yet. So I think. But having said all that, nothing to lose and whatnot, I still think the Braves have enough firepower, especially at the top. I don't think there's a better 1, 2, 3 at the top of the order in Acuna, Freddie Freeman, and Azuna. And I think the Braves get it. I think the Marlins do steal a game, so I'll take the Braves in 4. Joe?
All right. This is just really tough because I want that red P there, but unfortunately it's not there. No, here's the thing. We gave credit to the Marlins. We know, like Derek said, we know the rotation they're probably going to put out there, right? One thing we didn't talk about is the Braves role guys. Austin Riley, Nick Markakis, like those players, if they step up and they hit along the lines of Acuna and Albies and Ozuna and Free. Like, just think about that. Just
Yeah,
for the
and
like,
you didn't even mention Adam Duvall, and Adam Duvall's very good. I mean,
and I know these names.
yeah, these lineups are pretty loaded. So
I religiously watch Phillies Braves every year and just get more mad and more mad. But no, you got to credit the organization because they know how to run it. They win constantly, and I'm telling you right now, as it pains me to do, but I might be pulling for them a little bit because I don't like the Marlins either. The Braves in a really good series take it in 5. That's my led by the bats though, led by the bats and potential MVP Freddie Freeman.
So this game is going to be played in Houston, by the way, this series. So just to do a quick recap here, we'll all run through all of our picks. I went with the Yankees in 5 games. I went with the Astros in 5 games. I went with the Dodgers in 5 games, and I went with the sweep for the Atlanta Braves in the NLDS. Phil, do you want to recap what you have?
yeah, I think in the heated ALDS series, I think the Yankees will move on. It's going to be real tight, but I think the Yankees are going to move on. It's definitely going to go 5, and I think Oakland will come out to play. I think they're going to sweep. On the other side of the bracket, I'm really pulling for the Padres. I'm going to put down on the sheet Padres in 5, but it's going to be tough. And then I got my Braves moving on in 4 games. So.
Okay, I have the Yankees in 5 in a tough matchup with the Rays. I have the Astros in 4, too many bats, too much hitting. Dodgers in 5, the whole team is really good, and the Braves in 5 because they're the class of the NL East.
All right, so those were our picks for the ALDS and a recap of the wild card series in the MLB. I want to thank Phil Angle for joining us. Phil, you definitely know your baseball, so we appreciate you coming on and sharing your knowledge with us.
Yeah, honored to be the first guest. Happy to be back whenever you guys want me back. So
always welcome.
So next week we are most likely having another guest. So please tune in. You can follow our page, Timeout with Derek and Joe. Page we're very happy with how the page is doing, but please like and follow the page. Every video is going to go up there, as well as our Facebook pages, and this week Phil as well. So please stay following. And Joe, any last thoughts?
No, Phil, thanks again for coming on and being a part of the show. Really appreciate it. And Derek, another job well done. And listeners, yeah, follow, like, and definitely join our Derek and Derek and Joe, the Timeout Show. It's definitely new on the Facebook page, and just be looking forward to next week, another good show and another guest.
So that was for Joe Azalina and Phil Angle. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.